The climate talks at the COP30 summit started with a call for faster action and for countries to get along.
The UN climate chief said fracturing international consensus is threatening efforts to limit global warming.
But friends, let me be clear. In this arena of COP30, your job here is not to fight one another. Your job here is to fight this climate crisis together. Paris is working to deliver real progress. Let's not forget that.
He was speaking to delegates from more than 190 countries. The U.S., though, absent from the gathering. The world's largest historical emitter of greenhouse gases has opted to skip this year's summit. President Trump has labeled climate science as a con job.
I think that the absence of the U.S., some reluctance and complexity in the way that some other developed countries are dealing with climate have opened some space for the world to see what developing countries are doing.
Leaders at the UN climate talks have pushed for more efforts to curb global warming by reducing the carbon pollution that causes it. A new UN analysis of countries' emissions cutting plans estimates that global greenhouse gases would drop by 12% by 2035 from 2019 levels. Now, this is an improvement from an earlier estimate of 10% published last month. Well, the message of unity also echoed by Singapore's ambassador for climate action, who has urged Southeast Asian countries to take steps towards submitting climate commitments.
Yeah, head of COP30, CNA's Al-Khaldi spoke to Ambassador Ravi Menon about tangible outcomes he hopes to see at this year's summit.
Well, the most important, of course, is the progress on the submission of the nationally determined contributions. These are the commitments that countries make for their 2035 targets. So we're looking to have more countries, especially from Southeast Asia, step up. I think only 2 out of the 10 ASEAN countries have submitted their 2035 targets. So we hope to see more of the countries here do that, because that will send a strong signal that we are serious, that we have firm targets, and that will help to draw investments and capital into the region. Second, the emphasis that Brazil has placed on forests and nature, I think, is very apt, because that's equally applicable to Southeast Asia. So deforestation is the second largest source of carbon emissions in Asia after coal-fired power plants. And so solutions for deforestation, solutions and technologies for meaningful reforestation, restoration, mangroves, peatlands, and so on, those are very relevant for Southeast Asia. And so we hope greater attention on these issues at COP30 will also help Southeast Asia address some of its climate challenges.
Emerging Asia still needs trillions to meet climate goals or net zero goals. How much ground do you think this region in particular has taken when it comes to financial innovation for climate?
I think there's quite a long way to go in Southeast Asia. The amount of private financing for climate has increased very well over the last 10 years, say since the Paris Agreement, up by about 60%. But Southeast Asia has not been getting much. I think a lot of the financing is going to the advanced economies. A growing proportion of financing is now going to the large continental regional emerging economies like India or China and parts of Latin America. Southeast Asia needs to do much better. It's a question of finding the appropriate financing vehicles and structures and the right incentives to draw in private capital. The other area we're very focused on in Singapore is carbon markets, where we know there's demand by corporates to buy carbon credits, and when you buy these carbon credits, you are making possible decarbonization in an emerging market or a developing country where they don't have the necessary financing to carry out the transition project. But when the carbon credits are generated, that's in the absence of a carbon price, it's a very powerful tool to enable decarbonization that would otherwise not take place.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think Singapore will strengthen its position in the region to try and move this forward and advocate for these things?
Well, it's not only a question of strengthening Singapore's position. We want to be a catalyst, a facilitator, and a useful partner to the rest of the region. And so we use the tools at our disposal. It helps that we are a major financial and business center. So we have a large carbon services hub in Singapore and much of the infrastructure that's necessary. And so, as we have done in other areas, it is about making ourselves useful and relevant to the needs of Southeast Asia, and to channel some of this financing towards projects there. So the blended finance and carbon markets are two ways in which we do this. The other way is also as a source of clean technologies. There's a lot of work going on here on carbon capture, on hydrogen, on biofuels, agri-tech, and so on, which we hope will find useful applications in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia needs to develop technology solutions for its climate transition that's suited to its particular problems and particular issues, its geography and its stage of development. And I think that's a useful role Singapore can play, but in partnership with other countries in the region.